Alrighty, so they data mined all of the tier set bonuses. I was playing PoE, which you can see all my crystal life force behind me there. But now we can actually talk about the tier set bonuses a little bit because they seem really interesting, right? So we mentioned Demolish. Demolish is kind of interesting. 20% increase crit damage and critical strike damage your abilities by 20%, depending on your stacks of Colossal Might when consumed. This is once again a third stack of... Let me just bring it up again. Wow, head. This is once again... I showed it in the other video, but I might as well show it again here. That Arms already has a crit damage multiplier here. Colossus has another crit damage multiplier. And now, with this, Colossus will have a third crit damage multiplier, making crit insanely crazy. I also don't know how the modifiers stack, so I do wonder if you're still going to be crit haste as Colossus, or you might be more towards crit mastery, because our mastery gives us percentage increased damage, and I wonder how that, how that math actually works out with all those crit damage amps. Could be pretty good, but crit is going to be crazy. And the 4-piece is Demolish increases the crit chance of your next 2 Mortal Strikes by 100%. Mortal Strike or Shield Slam crits increases the damage of your Rend and Deep Wound by 8 seconds. So it's kind of like a little bonus. The damage our bleeds do kind of suck. I mean, this is going to increase the damage of our bleeds by, if I remember correctly, it was 100%. Yeah, 100% for 8 seconds, which is decent, but our bleeds also are kind of ass, so it might be good. It might just be some more, it's basically just a little bit of plus damage, but I do wonder how its AoE throughput is going to be, because we have a good way to spread deep wounds on AoE, but we don't have a great way to spread deep wounds on, or a Rend outside of hitting T-Clap a lot. But when you crit with your Mortal Strike, it also gives you that Rend and Deep Wounds buff, so maybe we'll be hitting T-Clap a lot more impacts that'll live longer. I don't know, we'll have to see. Mountain Thane 2-piece. Thunderblast has a 35% chance to call down 5 ionizing strikes on affected targets, so probably targets hit by a T-Blast. Each strike deals whatever of nature damage, right? Ionizing strikes deal 50% more damage and have a 20% chance to grant a charge of Thunderblast. So, this one is... could be crazy. T-Blast already does a ton of AoE damage. I don't know if they're going to fix, or when they might fix a seismic bug, which will reduce its damage a little bit. But you call down 5 ionizing strikes, and each strike has a 20% chance to grant a charge of Thunderblast. And if the math works out that the chance of you getting another Thunderblast back from your ionizing strike sounds really, really good. So it's possible you go into an AoE pack and you are just rampage T-Blast, rampage BT T-Blast, rampage BT T-Blast, rampage BT T-Blast, and you are just crushing AoE damage through all of these ionizing strikes and through T-Blasting. Or I guess you'd be bloodthirsting for even more chance of Thunderblast. So I kind of like that. It's good in AoE, it's good in single target. It's actually kind of cool and interesting. It has a lot of potential in AoE, I think, actually. I think Colossus Arms, just because of the design of Fury right now, is probably still going to be better for keys, but it's a really cool tier set. It's kind of cool. A little boring, but kind of cool. And then there's Slayer. Execute damage increased by 20%, and executes from sudden death have a 10% chance to 10% chance per stack of Overwhelmed on the target to trigger a Slayer strike at 100% effectiveness. Okay, so right now, Slayer Arms and Raid already has a problem of where we essentially play a weak or a deep. We play a weak or a class where we're trying to keep 15 stacks of Ashen Juggernaut up at all times by metagaming our sudden death procs to try and extend the duration of that buff, while also using as many sudden death procs as possible and not overcapping it too. So what ends up happening is every 3 Slayer strikes, right? Every 3 Slayer strikes, you get a free sudden death, which you should use to consume those Slayer strikes. You also get sudden deaths naturally. Now, if you have 10 stacks of Overwhelmed on your target, that means every single time you cast Sudden Death, you're guaranteed a Slayer Strike, which will give you another mark for execution. We have a lot of RNG within the class of like how many Slayer Strikes you're getting, how many Sudden Death procs you're getting, and this just kind of like increases that cycle to where, okay, let's say you're at, for example, let's say you're at 10, it adds to the weak aura now, even more, depending on how it's tracked. So now let's say you have casted 2 Slayer Strikes, but you have 10 stacks of Overwhelmed on the target, and you have a Sudden Death ready to go. That means you can cast a Sudden Death, guaranteeing a 3rd Slayer Strike, and guaranteeing another Sudden Death proc on top of that. So it is possible we are going to even game our Sudden Deaths for Ashen Juggernaut and those extended stack lengths even more, which is kind of cringe. I think they need to do something about how Ashen Juggernaut currently is to make this way less metagamey and more like, oh hey, I got a proc, I want to press Sudden Death. But because right now, the way you metagame it is to try and keep up 15 stacks of Ashen Juggernaut from as soon as you can get it to all the way to the end of the fight. And the damage variance between those and the damage variance between getting a lot of Slayer Strikes or getting some Slayer Strikes is kind of crazy, right? So it's very, very weird currently. The execute, the 2-piece being an execute-centric thing, especially increasing execute's damage baseline, is really, really big. I'm just worried about how metagamey and how more weak aura focused Slayer arms might be without a significant adjustment to Ashen Juggernaut, because it's bad enough as is, and with this, it'll get even worse. But the 4-piece, Raging Blow overpower damage increased by 20%, and Raging Blow overpower has a 2% chance per stack of Overwhelmed on the target to trigger Reap the Storm at 100% effectiveness. So that means that and Reap the Storm is the AoE hit, which is pretty good. It's just extra damage, really. All it is. It's the Slayer one is the Colossus and the Mountain Thane ones. I think are more interesting. The Slayer ones, outside of the caveat of Ashen Juggernaut cheesing for the 2-piece, which could be cringe. Hope they fix it. The 4-piece is just, hey man, there's no special interactions. There's nothing interesting you're doing. They're buffing Raging Blow even more, so we have even more priority on it. But, like, it's just, hey, man, plus damage, which, sure, man, whatever. The fact that you can hit Raging Blow on a target with a bunch of stacks of Overwhelmed on it and trigger Reap the Storm is interesting. I wonder how this Reap the Storm % chance works if you're hitting an AoE. So let's say you have 5 targets. They all have, like, 5 to 6 stacks of Overwhelmed on them from the Blade Storm you just cast, and now you are hitting all of them with a Whirlwind Cleaved Raging Blow. I wonder how that's going to have maybe a bunch of chances, so maybe it'll be a lot better for Slayer Fury and Keys, maybe, because you have some more consistent damage, because Reap the Storm actually does a lot of damage, so maybe. But the other thing about if you want to Reap the Storm to happen, you're pressing Bloodthirst, not Raging Blow, so it's kind of weird. Maybe might be a little better for arms specifically compared to Fury for that 4 set, but yeah, it's kind of plus damage. Kind of weird. But these are our tier sets so far, subject to change, obviously. But honestly, not bad. I one of the things I was really worried about is lack of theme, lack of sauce, lack of interesting things going on with the tier sets, considering they're making a hero set per hero talent compared to per spec. So they would have to make a lot more compared to what they did previously. But at least from the warrior ones, it seems like they've done a pretty sick job. We do have a list of the other ones. Here, let me bring these up here. Actually, no, I'm just going to keep this to the warrior effects, and then I'll make a separate video with the tier sets and stuff. So yeah, that'll be it. Bye-bye.